Ella stood quietly in front of the door to her childhood home, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. She had rehearsed her words countless times, crafting each sentence carefully, but now, standing on the threshold, they vanished from her mind like mist in the morning sun. As the door swung open, her father, Gregory, and mother, Elaine, greeted her with warm smiles that, for a fleeting moment, eased her tension. But the warmth was quickly replaced by cool scrutiny when Nathan stepped into view beside her. Nathan's jeans were faded and frayed at the seams, his shirt hung loosely on his lean frame, and his dark hair was disheveled as if untouched by a brush in weeks. Despite his rough appearance, his expression was gentle. He offered a polite smile and extended his hand in greeting. Neither Gregory nor Elaine took it. Their hands remained at their sides, rigid and unwelcoming. Ella's stomach clenched, but she forced a smile and guided Nathan inside. She prayed silently they would give him a chance. From the very beginning, Ella had kept one crucial truth hidden from her parents. Nathan was homeless. Nearly a year ago, she had found him sitting on a weather-worn bench in Lincoln Park, his nose buried in a tattered library book. There was something about the quiet concentration in his expression that drew her in. She sat beside him, struck up a conversation, and from that moment on, their lives became intertwined. As the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, Ella learned Nathan's story. Once a promising young architect, he had been laid off unexpectedly when his firm collapsed during an economic downturn. His savings quickly evaporated, and soon after, his apartment was gone. With nowhere to go, he drifted between shelters and park benches, surviving on little more than determination and the kindness of strangers. Despite his circumstances, Nathan never lost his gentle spirit or sharp mind. That, above all else, captured Ella's heart. But Ella feared her parents' judgment. Gregory was a respected professor, and Elaine ran a successful law practice. They valued appearances, social standing, and success. Her intuition whispered they would never accept Nathan. Sadly, she was right. At dinner that evening, the conversation was clipped and formal. Gregory and Elaine sat stiffly across the table, their gazes sharp as they questioned Nathan about his employment and living situation. Nathan answered calmly, explaining he was in between jobs and staying wherever he could, his voice steady but betraying the uncomfortable truth. Gregory's eyes narrowed. Elaine's lips pressed into a thin line. After that night, Ella's phone buzzed incessantly. Her mother's voice on the other end was cold, each word slicing through her resolve. "He's not good enough for you," Elaine said, her tone full of disdain. Gregory added, "You deserve better." Ella defended Nathan as best she could, but they refused to listen. Months passed, and the rift deepened. Ella remained steadfast. Nathan never complained, never lashed out at their rejection. His patience and quiet strength only reinforced her belief in their love. But then came the breaking point. One afternoon, a formal invitation arrived in Gregory and Elaine's mailbox. It was from Ella. She and Nathan were getting married. Gregory and Elaine were stunned and determined to stop the wedding. At the engagement party, Elaine pulled Ella aside, her voice shaking with anger. "If you marry him, we will cut you out of our lives," she warned. Gregory stood silently beside his wife but gave a slow, solemn nod of agreement. Ella's heart broke, but she clung to her decision. She loved Nathan. No ultimatum could change that. On their wedding day, Gregory and Elaine arrived, indignation etched on their faces. They stood at the entrance of a grand estate, staring in disbelief at the elegant stone arches, the manicured gardens, and the polished wooden doors. How could their daughter afford such a venue? Had she emptied her savings to pay for this? They exchanged worried glances. In the garden, they spotted Ella in her wedding gown. She glowed with joy despite the tension in the air. But their focus quickly shifted to Nathan. He stood nearby in his usual ragged clothes, his shoes worn and his shirt faded. He didn't even seem prepared for the ceremony. Gregory's temper flared, and he made his final demand. "If you marry him," he said, his voice trembling, "you will never see us again." Ella sighed, her shoulders heavy. She and Nathan had anticipated this moment. Without a word, Nathan stepped forward and handed Gregory a sealed envelope. "One chance," Nathan said quietly. "Look at what's inside. If you still want to leave after that, we won't stop you." Without waiting for a response, Nathan and Ella turned and disappeared behind the stone archway, leaving Gregory and Elaine standing in confusion. Elaine urged Gregory to open the envelope. Inside was a simple note with instructions. "Go to the ancient oak at the edge of the property. Dig beneath its roots, and you'll find the truth." Gregory's first instinct was to crumple the paper and toss it aside. But Elaine, curiosity piqued, persuaded him otherwise. Near the tree, a shovel leaned against the thick trunk. Grumbling under his breath, Gregory took it and began to dig. After several minutes, the shovel struck something solid. They unearthed a small wooden box. Inside the box was an old photograph. Ella and Nathan, smiling warmly at each other in a quaint little diner. Beneath the photo was an envelope thick with crisp $100 bills. Gregory's hands trembled as he counted the money. Thousands of dollars. Tucked inside was a handwritten message on a slip of paper. "Go to the master bedroom for the rest of the answers." Confused and anxious, they hurried back to the house and found the master bedroom. On the bed was another framed photo. This time, it showed a distinguished man and woman with a young boy dressed in fine clothes. Attached to the frame was a folded letter. Elaine opened it and began to read aloud. The letter told Nathan's story in full. He had grown up in wealth. His parents, powerful figures in finance, demanded perfection in every aspect of his life: grades, behavior, appearance, and achievements. No matter how hard he tried, he was never enough. Eventually, Nathan could no longer endure their cold expectations. He walked away from everything, severing ties with his family and their fortune. For years, he lived on the streets, struggling but surviving. When his parents died in a sudden accident, their attorney contacted him. Nathan was the sole heir to their vast estate. This mansion, the fortune, everything they had once used to control him. But the years of hardship had changed him. He no longer cared for wealth or appearances. He vowed never to let money define him again. Nathan chose to live modestly, even poorly, to see who would love him for who he was rather than what he had. Even Ella's parents were kept in the dark about his inheritance. He had to know if they could accept him as a person, not a stereotype. The letter concluded with words that made Elaine's throat tighten. "I know you acted out of love for Ella, just as I once wished my parents would have loved me unconditionally. I hope today we can become a real family, not bound by money, but by love, respect, and acceptance. If you're ready, come celebrate with us." By the time Elaine finished reading, tears streamed down her cheeks. Gregory stood silently, his face pale. They realized how their fear and prejudice had turned them cruel. Without another word, they rushed outside. In the garden, soft music played as guests filled rows of white chairs. At the altar stood Nathan, no longer in rags but dressed in an elegant tailored suit, his hair neatly combed, his shoes polished. His eyes shone with warmth as he spotted Gregory and Elaine approaching. Ella turned and smiled at her parents. Her vows began soon after, her voice shaking slightly as she spoke of the first time she met Nathan, how his kindness and intelligence brought light to her life in ways she never expected. When it was Nathan's turn, he took Ella's hands and glanced toward her parents. "I want to thank you both," he said softly, "because even in your resistance, I saw the love you had for Ella. It made me wish my own parents had loved me as fiercely. I'm sorry for deceiving you, but I had to be certain. I wanted to know if you could accept me, not the image of me." Gregory, overcome with emotion, rose from his seat. He walked to the altar and placed Ella's hand in Nathan's. "You take care of our daughter," he said quietly, "and we'll try to be the family you've never had." Nathan smiled and embraced him. Elaine wiped her tears, joining them. The ceremony unfolded in joy and relief. It no longer mattered who Nathan had been or where he had come from. What mattered was the love they all shared now, freely given and finally accepted. And as they celebrated beneath the warm light of the setting sun, Surrounded by laughter and hope, no one gave a second thought to what Nathan wore that first night at Gregory and Elaine's house.